So, again, here's the process that you've been seeing for so long, and you know it probably by heart. And in the last time, what we did is we talked about research methods, which are coming handy in the empathize and in the testing session and the testing part. What we did is we talked about methods of gathering data, and we talked about qualitative and quantitative methods. You remember probably this chart where we had the qualitative methods in this part, and the qualitative methods are those methods which answer the why question, and those are very, very vague tests. There is no actual methodology, or actually there is. The think aloud testing is a very good, and the interviewing technique is the main tool we have there when we go and ask the people and see what they do, check their emotions and check their basic needs and the basic causes of their needs. Remember the five whys. Remember that? That is a qualitative method of data gathering. Then there is the quantitative side, which answers the how many, how much type of questions. Those are the ones that are statistical. They gather data, lots of people, lots of questions, lots of testers. Then we looked at one way of summarizing the data, and that was the empathy map. Probably you remember that. This one here, where you gathered the insights. You've seen you put the results of the research, the results of the interviews into these quadrants, starting out with the one and then going inside to the head by checking by summarizing what the user thinks, what he feels, and these are all gathered from the research. So when we put something, what do they see? It means what, for example, what do they see on a commercial? What do they see on the site? And those kind of things. Then what do they say is what you heard. Those are quotations out of the interview, for example, which might come in handy later on. And what do they do is the actual process that they do. You can jot it down there. What do they hear from other people? And you go around like that. Then we talked about the persona, how to create one. You remember you created one using the huge csomagolópapír, however that is called in English. Wrapping paper, thank you. We used the brown wrapping paper, and Krista showed you a way how it is very easy to create a persona from your own research. And she also mentioned that there is a proto-persona, which is kind of a pre-persona. When you don't have enough data, you can still kind of have a feeling of who your user is going to be. And when you have enough data, you can modify that persona and back it up or change it actually. One very important thing about personas is that they are an evolving document, so to say, a document. They are always evolving. It's not something that you do it once and then you can leave it like that. You do have to look back at it and see if what we are doing or what you are doing and what they still see is necessary for them is true for your document, for your persona. It's very important that it is a person. It's not a real person, but still it is kind of like a person. Everybody who is in the team need to be able to emphasize with it. Okay, need to feel how he feels or she feels. That's the main point of having the persona. For everybody in the group who is in the project knows what that person is like, and we can say that, okay, when we have a name, for example, Anna is like that. You remember Anna is not going to like that feature. She will not be able to handle that flow. It's too difficult for her. And when we say Anna, we all know who we think about. Okay, that's why it's important to have a persona which is communicated and which is came out from the cooperation of the team. Okay, it's a communication tool. This is not ours. It has nothing to do with us. But this is a sample. We have a name. We have a face. You know, everybody can relate to that person. We have some demographics. We have some bio, which is not always necessary. But what is important is the goals and the frustrations. We also have some brands, some technology affinity, some motivators. Why do we have the brands? We didn't do anything with the brands the last time. We didn't even mention it, but now I have it there. And why it's there is if we know that that persona, that person, Jill in our case, is related to Basecamp, for example, then we kind of have a feeling how she would behave. Also, if we are in an ideation, what we are going to do today, we can say, for example, how would Basecamp do the problem that we are facing? Since we know that Jill is okay with Basecamp, she likes Basecamp, she likes how Basecamp operates. Do you know what Basecamp is? No? Yes? Who doesn't know what Basecamp is? Okay, Basecamp is a collaborating tool, and it helps you to manage projects. Helps you to keep together all project-related documents, communications. So it's like a Confluence, but for much smaller organizations than what we are. It's not that rigid as Confluence. It's a very startup-ish something. Okay. So if we know that she works with that, then we kind of know how she feels, how she behaves, and we have one point of understanding, of a deeper understanding of her. Do you understand that, what I was trying to? Okay, that's perfect, thank you. So, then we talked about storyboards. And okay, the question is, how does storyboards come to this UX stuff? One point is that storyboard, again, is a very good communication tool. Probably you've heard of it before. If not, then I'm going to tell you. Story is the strongest method of communication. If you tell a story, it's going to stick better. It's going to be it's helping you better to imagine what's going to happen. So story is for a UXer, and actually for a lot of people, it's a very, very effective way of communication. So when we have a story, we know the feelings, we know what is going to happen, and that's why we write a storyboard. Storyboard is actually, and here's your storyboards, all of them, and I actually did bring them also. So storyboards are there to set the scene. They do not need, as you see, they are not very punctual of the flow itself. They are just there to kind of give you a feeling, a starting state and an end state of the process that your user is going to go through. Okay? Again, this is a communication tool. Most of the time, when we use a storyboard, it is to communicate to stakeholders what is going to happen. I do have a story about this. We were working, actually it was a very long project at Telecom, and our task was to, for the SMB customers to digitalize their offering. That means that the way how they buy a new service and a new product. And as a matter of fact, in the SME era, I mean not SME era, but for the SMEs, there are actually 4 legs of. Actually, there are more. 4 legs of the offer. There is an IT. They can buy license for Office, and they can buy laptops. That's the IT offering. They have a mobile offering, and in that mobile offering, they have data and voice, which they have to select, and they have also a landline offering, which means that they can select again voice and data. And they have, and that's the fourth flag, they can buy devices for both the landline and for mobile. And you have to do that selection for every single address that they have, the company has. And of course, well, you live at one address, but for a company that can be more addresses. And you have to make sure that they can select for a lot of people, for hundreds of people, everything online. And what we did is, of course, show the storyboard. And it was something like that, not more steps like that. And what was the most important thing when we presented the storyboard is that at the very last page, the client was happy. And that was what our stakeholder was looking for. If the client is happy, then the storyboard can go and we can continue our work. So storyboard is a very powerful presentation technique for stakeholders because it's simple enough, but you have one understanding and they have the same understanding of the process. Okay. What we are going to do today is kind of building from that on. And the first couple of things that I would like to show you are still, again, have to do with the research and have to do with the define and ideate stage. So what we are going to do today is the define, ideate, and prototype triumvirates. We're going to look at a couple of methods, actually 1.5 methods to again not collect but show the data or arrange the data. Why are you happy?
Because I have a project called that.
Oh, okay. Oh, yes, I should have known. Yes. Okay, that's a different. But actually, well, okay, let's discuss that later on. So the experience maps are another method of showing what you learn from the user. So it's really kind of goes into the research state, in the emphasize state, kind of like, again, a summary. It's very similar to an empathy map, but looks at the findings in a different way. What it actually does is takes a look at the whole process. While empathy map was looking at the person itself, now we are going to look at the process of what we are designing. And there are a couple of ways how we can look at it. One way to look at it is to look at it to check from the beginning to the end, and don't take care of the persona. Just look at it generally. How does any customer would experience our company, our processes, our products, everything. So that's like brand experience, customer experience. That goes into this area. When we don't look at one exact process and one exact persona, but rather how does the person who is coming into our shop feels in general while he is interacting with our company. What is very important is that we do have, in this case, a so-called touch point. What is a touch point? Have you ever heard of touch points before, other than that? No? Well, actually, touch point is exactly like that. When okay, the customer can get in touch with our company in different points, and these points, when he kind of enters our area, is the touch point. When I buy a plane ticket, I can go to the how does it called? I can go to the airport and buy it there at the kiosk. I can go online. I can use Kayak. I can use whatever site. I can use a mobile phone. Well, that's not a mobile phone, but I can use a mobile phone. These are all different touch points. And for example, in our case, when we look at it from the bank's perspective, again, the bank is getting in contact with the client through the branch, through a call center, through an online form or an online page, a site, or through an application, through another person. Okay, these are all different touch points. And when we look at the experience of the customer, we have to take care of each touch point one by one. One special case of an experience map is a user journey. And this is a user journey which does have the Finastra colors, and it's Finastra, but it's not ours. Unfortunately, we do not have a digital a customer experience or a user journey map. This is the corporate user journey, but it's perfect to see what it contains and how it can work. What it has, it has a persona place where we show who that persona is. It's just for me to know that this is the journey of him. This is his journey, because there are a lot of people who get in touch with a corporate. For example, the banker, the branch person, and this person is a security finance trader. Okay, so there are a lot of personas. This journey is for that persona. You'll see it. You don't have to have a magnifying glass. I'm going to show it to you in bigger. This part is the steps. What stages, what steps that person takes throughout the journey. And then we have different things that we look at each stage. The task, the touch points that I mentioned here, they have Finastra, data providers like Bloomberg, an Excel sheet, a trading platform. These are separate platforms that in his journey of doing his everyday day work, he gets in contact with. And then we have a performance expectation in that case. This is a general journey template. It has exactly the same forms. We have a persona, number one. We have a scenario and a goal of what, yeah, it's written, yeah. On your tables. This is today's handout. So you have a scenario, you have the stages of the step. So when we are thinking of, for example, sending money has some stages. And that stage, the first stage can be you log in to the application. That's the first stage. What is the next stage? What is the next stage? These big stages. For example, for an e-commerce site, these stages are, I find, or actually any commerce, I find information on the product. I make a decision. I buy, meaning that I pay for it. I receive the stuff that I bought is shipped to me, or I take it home. Then I use the product, and at the very end, we do have to take care of, when we are looking at an experience map, when that relationship kind of dies out, when I throw out the product, or do not renew my subscription, when the contact with the company just dies out. This is one stage as well. Then we take a look at the steps the customer or the user is taking at each step of the or each stage of the process. So, for example, when I look for a product that I would like to buy, I go to sites where I compare. I look at other people's comments. I also can have no, that's not that. So these are the steps that I do. For paying, I can choose to pay at the site, or I can choose to pay when I receive the product. I can go for shipping. I can go to pick up the product, or I can choose between separate shipping methods. These are all the different steps of each stage. Then there are some quotes. Remember the quotes from the empathy map? Remember the quotes from the user interviews? Those quotes go into there. Those quotes that are very important in that section. For example, when the user says that, okay, I don't know how to choose the shipping method I would like to have, because it's not clear what I need to use. Okay, or how do I pay with a credit card if I want to have the package shipped to me, but the site doesn't offer a bank card payment, an online payment. No. And for us, a very important, and this is why it's an experience map, is then there is a section for mapping the experience. Why is it good? Why is it necessary for us to know the experience? Remember two occasions before, I explained to you about the experiencing self and the remembering self. Do you remember that? Something? Okay. And that was about the notion that we do not have to have an all good experience for the full process. What is important for us is really that we have the memory that is good. And that memory can be changed in ways. So we don't have to be always this high, because actually what is going to happen is that if we have a very stable experience, then the user is just not going to remember anything. It's just a forgettable experience. While if we have some peak points, then the user is going to be forgetful of the low points. And of course, we cannot have always peak points because it's slow, because we cannot optimize for everybody. We do have some lows, but those lows can be corrected with high points. But to do that, we do need to know where are the high points and where are the low points. So that's why the experience map is very important for us, to know how the user is experiencing the interaction with us. Okay? Make sense? It's a huge problem that actually at this point of time we do not have an experience map, any kind of experience map, because these experience maps can be created hypothetically. Okay, what we can do is we can create an empathy map, or not an empathy map, a journey map out of research. We can actually ask the users to report on the experience. Then what we can also do is say that this is what we feel, kind of. We feel that this is a bad part, so it can be a hypothetical experience map. It's better than nothing. We can have a retrospective experience map, which is an experience map which looks at how it is today. And then we can have a future-looking experience map when we want to show the user journey how we want it to be in the future, what we are aiming to do. Okay? So as a summary, a user journey map is actually a special case of an experience map. And why it is a subset of experience map is because a user journey is looking at one special user, while the experience map is looking at all the users, the general users. A user journey is looking at one actual journey of the user, one process, while the experience map is looking at the general feeling the user or the customer has with us. Okay. Do you have any questions about that? How many do you think that we should have one? How many are willing to participate in a user journey creation exercise? Okay, let's answer the second one. Great. Anyway, you are going to do one. But to make it easy on you, we are not going to actually. You are not going to do one for Finastra or Finastra Digital, but for your users of the people who were buying the transport tickets. Remember last time you did that storyboard? So we're going to continue from that storyboard. If you remember, that storyboard was about a person. You created the persona, and you had the storyboard, and that storyboard was about what the future should look like. Remember, Krista asked you to write a future of a story, not the current state. Okay? And now you have to create the user journey map of that story, of the future. Yes. So we are going to make it stage by stage. The first I'm going to ask you is just to arrange yourself. And while you arrange yourself, just have the wrapping paper out again. And do the top half. So when you have the wrapping paper, if you are going to use it that way, no, that way, and that way as well. So be prepared to need all four. And what I would like to ask you now is just really to set up your workspace and fill out the top half. That means have the persona, just write down the name that you gave the persona and what is the purpose of the journey. Buying an e-ticket. Okay? That's the first step. Yes. So I'm pretty sure that everybody does have the persona and the role, the goal already set up. So we're going to have, we're going to move on to the next step, which is the stages. That is number 3. Okay, so what you have to do now is think through your storyboard and find the big stages of the process. Okay? What he went through. You don't need the one that is before, like she was wrong, because that's not the process. That's not the step in the buying process. Okay? So the big process, big stages of the buying process. Just one advice: use the sticky notes now, from now on, because you will need to make a lot of changes. Okay? So sticky notes, and use one color for stages, then the second color for the other step. Okay? So stages, one color, and spaces apart, because one stage will have a lot of steps. Okay? Okay, do you understand it? I'll go around it. Pontosan, egyébként pontosan erről van szó. Így van, ezt olvasom kell, mert hiszen most itt van, akkor So, two important things about journeys. One is that when I am a company and I'm a provider, for example, service provider, what I should do is do the customer journey and then pair it with the so-called service blueprint. And service blueprint is the other side of this story. So when I have the steps and I look at what the customer is feeling, what he's going through, now I have to take care of the other side. So the same step, what does it require from me on the service side? What backend system? What human resource? So a service blueprint contains the other half from the company's point of view who is providing the service. And again, that is called the service blueprint. So exactly, they do exactly the same thing. They have the stages, they have the steps, the tasks, and then under each task, they have kind of, if they do, sometimes they do have a screenshot of the actual screen of the application, and then the underlying technology just written down in each step, because there might be a backend, there might be some human resource, some call center, some sales personnel that needs to be doing something, and that's how they plan their service. Another thing is that I mentioned that some tables that this is one of the first steps of designing kind of anything, especially a digital thing. Even though if you don't have the storyboard, sometimes that is omitted, but the user journey is very important to know and be on the same page with everybody who's working on the project or who's working in the company. What are the steps? It's a high-level tool to agree on what should be followed, what is the process what is the process that this journey is taking. And I was just explaining that with Barbie, with the PhD too, we did something similar. We had this very interesting black person and red person persona. That's racist, yeah. I mean, yeah, but who is red person? I mean, not politically correct and not, it's racist and not politically correct. Sorry, but still we had the red person and the black person because that's the type of Sharpies we had, black and red. And we actually did, everything until the thought part. So we had the steps from looking at the back end and the front end. Unfortunately, it was only the two of us who was doing this exercise, and we could not include anybody from the development side. So what is a way to go forward, and how this is usually done at places, is that they include everybody from every area, so everybody has the same understanding of what should be developed or what should be designed, what should be do with the customer. Okay? So now we have a persona, and we are at an ideal company. We have a persona who everybody agrees that these are our customers. We also have some kind of user journey, and if we are very, very, very good, we also have some experience map which contains all the journeys. But let's just say that we are realistic and we have a journey. The next step would be to build the actual product based on that journey. And this is called a digital space, wireframing, because we don't just jump right to designing something. What we like to do, the UX people especially, is to draw wireframes. The wireframe is actually a simplified outline of the product. It can be paper or electronic, and it basically shows the structure of that actual page or that actual thing. I'm saying thing because wireframe cannot only be digital. I mean, a wireframe, a table can be wireframed. You know, when you stick together some, you can model a table. But just let's stick for our case, stick to the digital area. So a wireframe includes in some high sense the content that should be at least with highlights included, and the structure of the content and the steps or the processes or the tasks that the person can do at that exact page. It shows relative priority. That means that even though I do not show the actual design of a button, but I show that there are two kinds of buttons, one primary or one secondary. I show the priority of the text by saying that one is a heading 1, one is a heading 2, one is a heading 3. I don't know how that will look like. I use Arial and whatever points font, yeah, not font, but the size of the font. But anyway, sizing. But I write. I use the hierarchy of the text as well. And again, what is very, very important is that we do not focus on we do not focus on design. It's not important what color the text is. It's not important what color the heading is. These are not important things. Many times we just schematically draw a header because that's not the focus of most of the wireframes. We do not usually use colors. It's a very high fidelity wireframe when we start to use colors. So the wireframe focuses on space allocation, where everything is, you know, the patches. What is the priority? What is front? What is down? What is above the fold? What is below the fold? Do you remember the heat map we looked at? Remember that? So the heat maps can decide, for example, in this decision, what to put forward and what to put back, to put down. Also, what functionality is available on that site? What can you do, not site, but page? What can you do on that page? Am I selecting a zip code, or am I selecting? Am I able to select the type of currency? That's it. Thank you for myself. Am I able to select a currency on a send money form? Or am I just restricted to the currency of my account? These are all the things that a wireframe can show from the very, very first draft, the first fidelity. And of course, intended behavior can also be shown. What do we want that button to be? How do we want that button or that form to behave? Do we want it as a drop-down, or it's a different, it's an overlay that comes up when there is a list to select from? These are all possible to show with the wireframe. You don't need color, you don't need pixel-perfect design, detailed design to show that. And right after having a journey, this is the first step to do. Why do we do wireframes? Because this is a very, very, very easy and fast way to communicate, to show your thoughts, to show your, well, maybe decisions. Wireframes are a very good way to ask for feedback, because you know you have one common ground. And you can relate that, and you can. It's always easier to say, okay, I don't like this and don't like that, than coming up with a complete new solution. So that's why wireframes are easy to use and important. Also, when you have a wireframe, technical feasibility can be checked. if we write down, if we draw down how we want that process to look like, developers can look at it and say, okay, this we cannot do. This will cost too much. And this is all without actually designing the detail. It's actually putting effort in the detailed design. When should we wireframe? Actually, to that question, the answer is the same to when should we test, always, whenever it's possible. So when should we wireframe? As soon as possible. So right after we agree on how the process should look like, let's do a wireframe. Even parts of it. It's okay to have just parts of it figured out. And why is it important to have as early as possible? As I explained in the how before, it's a very good communication tool. And since we are using just black and white lines and boxes and text, it's very quick to change. So it's very cheap to do because you don't need to change a code. You don't need to change colors and pixels and distances because you don't care about those. That's not what a wireframe is supposed to show, because you can show hierarchy without all that. And actually, I don't know if you know who Roger Pressman is. He's a software architect or whoever. But you do know them. No. Yes. Oh, he has. Yes, because he does have a fan page. And actually, I don't know how true that is because I couldn't find the original source. But this quote is in UX in the UX community. This is something that is said. That and I'm pretty sure that you developers can agree that it is much harder and much more expensive to change the code than to change a couple of lines and than a wireframe, because while we agree on the process, one of us is doing the wireframe, and a coding requires at least 2, 3, 4 people to do, while just draw. Well, just draw. So it's over. Okay, it's not just draw, but it's still cheaper to redraw something than to redesign and recode something. Another person, Jacob Nielsen, he's a UX person. You probably heard of him. He just looks okay. It doesn't look nice. How can it be? Is it?
The worst picture.
Actually, the truth is, this is the best picture of him. We'll go and search for him. This is one of the best. I really had to find the time to search for a picture where he looks good. So just check it out. Anyway, he says that if we have usability data early on, then it's much more valuable than the usability data that we receive later. Why? Because it's much easier to use that data and change the flow and build that information into our actual design. See, I told you. I mean, doesn't it?
This is the best time.
Okay, sure. Okay. Okay, how do you wireframe? Well, just draw lines, boxes, and write text. One thing is very important. There is, of course, fidelity. And you do have to start, well, no, you don't have to, but it's wise to start with less detailed wireframes. And I'm going to actually show a couple of these. And this, what I'm going to show you, is the process which is which goes from low fidelity, low detail, to high detail, high fidelity wireframes. And this is the theory. sometimes we don't do every step, but this is how in theory it should be done, and at least 2 of these stages should be around in any development process, in any design process. So the first one is a wire flow. It relates to the journey that you just draw, because each step, each task can be matched with a flow, with a screen, and that screen can have a wireframe. And when I show how these wireframes relate to each other, that is a wire flow. And that can be a sketch, or that can be a bit more detailed digital version, when you actually show what is the important thing. Here, the magenta ones are the ones which are the red route, what is put, and some options which needs to be taken care of. This was actually made. You can see that this is version A. There were actually 2 versions. No, actually 3 versions, and it was the developer who then decided which version to use, because which was the easiest and the fastest he could develop. Why I made this and the 3 versions in about an hour, actually this saved a lot of discussion of something that we didn't have a hand on before I drew the pictures. If you know what I mean. I drew the 3 versions. We could, with the business stakeholders, we could go through the process. He understood what are the limitations, and then we could make the decision based on that. This is even more detailed. Because here there are, but in this one, there is actually 1 flow, and the limitations of each flow is written down. Here there are more, there are decisions that you have to make. And this is even more difficult. And the truth is, the wire flow, this was supposed to be an application which was designed last year. It didn't happen actually. It was shut down because it was technically impossible to do. The idea was that when you put your phones by side by side on a table, for example, when you have a business meeting or you are having a dinner with somebody, and you put down the phones, and both of you are starting the applications, it notices, one phone is noticing the other one, and on the joint screen, a time is written out. So if I have 5 phones side by side, then the time, the elapsed time, is shown on the 5 screen consecutively. Do you understand? Like one screen. And credit, for example, if this is done in a company, then a credit, some kind of HR credit is given for each second the phones are together. And if somebody breaks it out, then he's not receiving any credit for that duration. So what was impossible to do actually is we have this was whole thought through. What was not possible in that short time is, for example, to align the screens, because you have different screen sizes. One thing, and the other thing is how the behavior would be different with Android and iOS. So there were so many variations that technically it would have been too expensive. Not difficult, but expensive to do. And you can see this, the pairing part. And you see in this wire flow that the details are not, I mean, there is lorem ipsum there. It's just really the most important steps in each screen that this emphasizes on. And this is the first step. Basically, you can do it on the whiteboard, on paper, on Post-its. You can do it electronically until there is an agreement on how the process should work. And when we are reaching an agreement, we can start to work on the details of the screen. The first step, again, is to sketch. Pen, pencil and paper, whiteboard, whatever. Sketch with hand. Since you cannot be that detailed when you use pencil and paper, especially if you write, if you use these thicker felt pens, you cannot use that much detail. You cannot put that much detail on the paper. Then we go to, then we arrive to low fidelity wireframes. Actually, what you do is you just electronize, or however you call that. No, digitalize. Thank you. digitalize your sketches. For example, these ones. Some of you might have known this. Or this one. And then when you go forward from then, see here, you don't have that much detail. No detail at all, no words, just how it behaves, what are the priorities, what are the sizes compared to each other. It is not, it's not showing the exact size of the screen here. It has nothing to do with the pixel that it's going to be at the end. It's just showing behavior. When we reach high fidelity, we still don't have colors, but actually the steps that are taken are detailed out to the very last point. This was the steps how you would, I think it never happened, or not this way. This is, well, the person who was the stakeholder, the buyer, actually got fired. So. So it was developed, it was there, it was tested, everything was done, just the button had to be pushed, but then he was fired, everything was, but maybe it is, I don't know, I didn't check. But what happens is for Samsung, they don't have one-to-one relationship with the customers. But they want to see how their buying behavior is. They want to have some kind of information from them. And their only way how to do that is to ask for the customers to register their product. Okay, so I buy a Samsung vacuum cleaner, I go there and register the product. And they receive extra warranty or guarantee period if I register. And they receive a lot of data from me in exchange. So this is the process. So it's elementary for them so that this registration process goes smoothly. And what happened is we did an analysis, and they found out that actually it took 40 minutes sometimes to register one vacuum cleaner. 40 minutes. Okay, not many people would do a 40-minute registration. No, see?
4-0.
4-0. Yeah.
14 is really so
it's same, yeah, and actually we did have concrete video because we use Hotjar, and Hotjar is taking the screen flow, but taking kind of like a video of the journey. And we did have actually 40-minute long videos, and he didn't check. I mean, the mouse was moving, the page was moving, so he was there for 40 minutes. What happened is that they actually had two kind of serial numbers. No, two kind of, not serial number is only one, but they don't use the serial number for registration. They use the type, the typusszám, the type, sorry? Type code, yeah, something. Well, anyway, every machine has this type, like model number, thank you. But there were two model numbers written on the box. And one in small letters and one in big letters, and their application didn't take the big ones, just the small ones, and nobody found the small ones. And so, huge glitch in the registration process. So what we actually did is to have the registration at the very first step. Well, not the first step, but actually the very first step, because the step above was just a copy. To have the very first step, you write down the serial number, and when you have the serial number, the company knows what kind of product you have. Like, why do you have to write it down before? So this made the registration process under 4 minutes. Everybody could do it, even when you fill out every other questions as well. And also we did the redesign of their general site as well. And this was a high fidelity wireframe. Actually, this was used to put into detailed design. And even more even higher fidelity wireframe is when we already use colors and we already use some kind of design elements. And it's especially, we can do this especially when there is a very, there is an agreed design theme. There is, it might be familiar, you might be familiar with that term. We have a design system in place. Because at that case, we can just grab the elements and use that. We know how that will behave. We don't have to show the behavior. But this is not detailed design. Actually, I made that in Azure. So it's not a detailed design. It doesn't follow the actual pixels, the actual spacing, the actual letter sizes, but it gives you a better feel of how it is going to look like. And at the very end, there is detailed design, which is another person, usually a GFX person or a UI person who is doing. And, well, you've all seen detailed design before, because that's the end product, basically. Oh, interesting. Okay, that's the important thing here. So the question is probably, okay, we talk about wireframes, but sometimes you do hear prototype. How many of you have ever heard of a Word prototype?
Word.
Sorry?
Word.
Word like so.
So, not
Okay. Sometimes we use prototype and wireframe interchangeably, but actually they are two separate concepts. While wireframe is a static thing, a prototype is something which you can interact with. Okay, so a wireframe becomes a prototype when you push or you pretend that you push a button and something happens. That can be a paper prototype when there is just a drawing or a printout of a screen and there is a person, kind of, it's like a Wizard of Oz kind of thing, that the person is playing the computer and is highlighting the thing that you highlighted. See here. This is, you see that the document holder, you know, the plastic document holder. This is what we used to show what is selected. You know, we draw the rectangle and we will just yeah, and the tester just showed where she would push, where she would pick, and we just moved the selection there. Of course, this will not work if you want to test details, but this works very well when you want to test concepts, how the flow, how the steps are working together. And since testing is very important in our view, it's imperative that we can use testing methods that are easy to do, cheap and fast to do. And the paper prototype is a pretty fast way to do it. I mean, it takes about an hour to do these interesting, and just a bit of imagination to play around and see how you can play the computer and how you can show what is selected. And I'm going to show you an Azure prototype. Azure is the prototype, the wireframing tool that actually the business analysts are using, and probably you are also using Azure, aren't you? Azure, who is using Azure? Okay, everybody knows what Azure is. Okay, but you know what Azure is. And the thing is that you not only can draw wireframes, but you can also put together a complete prototype. That means that the person can push the right button and the right interaction will happen. You can actually have variables and those kind of things, but that takes so much time, so nobody, well, some people do it, but I haven't seen anybody who, well, okay. Okay, sorry. This is, again, for telecom, this is for the business user, the sales personnel who is visiting the SMEs. So that's a tool for them. And what happens here is, if he chooses a company, then the dashboard for the company is shown that he wants to have a new offer for him. So these are the offers that are possible. No, these are the services that they have. So what happens is he wants to see other options, and then he wants this magenta one because was for the magenta one. And you, from here on, you see that the type changed, because before that it was pictures. It was not drawn because it was an already existing process. But this is the new process. He has to give the where he lives, and it is actually filled out. And I'm not going to go forward, but you can see that that you can do a testing with those screens that you draw in Azure, and go from then on through the whole process. Another one, you might be familiar with this one. It's an InVision prototype. In InVision, what you can do is, while in Azure you can simulate every type of movement. You can have a radio button, you can have a drop down, and it works in a way how a drop down would work. In Azure, what you have actually is pictures after pictures, and you define a point of interaction on a picture. You define where the user should click, and if the user clicks there, then the next picture is going to be shown. Again, these are pictures. So if I see, it highlights where I can click. Anywhere else, it's not going to work. And if I click there, then the next screen comes, and the next screen, and the next screen, and the next screen. This can be done, these prototypes can be done, again, with low fidelity. It's just not going to look that well. So, no. It's a bit difficult to go from this one. Okay, do you have any questions to prototypes? And wireframes, when we use them, or these kind of things? Questions? Great. One thing that is we see very often is that that most of the time we have this comment that we don't have the time to do the prototype or the wireframe, or we just don't do the wireframe because we don't know what's going to be the process. And since we don't know the process, we just don't do the wireframe. And what I would like to show with this picture is that since wireframes are comparatively cheap, I know that work has to be done in it, but comparatively cheaper than anything else, it's okay to change a wireframe. It's okay when we don't know what do we want to design, how do we want the process to look like. It's completely okay to turn it back and then do it again, because that's what wireframes are for. You don't build a house before a blueprint, and prototypes and wireframes are kind of like the blueprints of the house. It's easier to change the blueprint than take down the whole house and the walls. Okay, and now playtime. But before playtime, I have an energizing game for you. Wow! I would like to ask you to find two other people. So you are 3 or 4, and you have to work on it. Back there.
We have
And yeah, there too. Okay, who cares? Okay, anyway, I'd like you to be, if you're more than 4, it's going to be a bit harder, but it's your choice. I'm going to ask you to enter a paper plane contest. And I would like to ask each group to build a paper plane that flies the fastest. We are actually going to try that. But there is a limitation. You have A4, use the A4 pages, those ones, and there are limitations. I would like to ask each person in the group to put up the dominant hand, the one that you write with. Okay, now this is the hand that you're not going to use. Put it in the back. You can only use, no. It's a group exercise. Each group builds one plane. Okay? Not, if you are 4 in the group, it's not 4 planes, but each group builds one plane. And each person in the group can only use the other hand, that other one. Okay? Okay. Let's have pilots, please come. Let this be the line of departure. Okay, this is the line of departure. Okay, so the 3 ones that arrive there can have a second round. So pick up your planes. And then let's try it on the map. And a different course. Okay, so you go ahead and draw another one. You have to fire the information. Yeah. Okay, much success. Okay, just let's hold it from there.
Kitaláltál, ez olyan messzire.
Oh! Yeah, you can try.
We have a winner. Where is the winner? There. The winner of the epic. Okay. So.
Now it's live, come on. I think she's alive.
Yeah. So what we are going to have today, and now at the end of, at the second half of the session, is a design studio. Design. And in that, we are going to try different types of ideation methods. And I would like to ask you all to just grab some A4 paper. Grab a sheet of paper. Everybody grab a sheet of paper. And grab one pencil which is not yellow, one pen which is not yellow, and the one that is colorful here. So the thicker ones. Yes, those ones. Not that one. So what we are going to do is a crazy six. It's called crazy six. And the idea is to have six separate ideas in 5 minutes. So what you can do is just fold the paper in half, and then just do a third, Yeah, you understand what I'm saying? Just fold this third, and then the other, yeah. And then you have like 6 separate spaces. Yeah, you have a 6-pack. It's not important. I mean, the sizes are not important, so just. The first 5 minutes is going to be a work on your own, and I would like to ask you to find ideas, to brainstorm on ideas on how on the actual screens of your journey. So what you now have to do is you have a journey that you mapped out. You know what are the steps. You know what tasks the client has to make, the user has to make, and draw actual wireframe sketches on your paper to how you would do it. One sketch per one area. Okay? You don't. It doesn't need to be six subsequent screens. You can draw a variation of one screen 6 times. It doesn't matter. It's your decision. Vagy egy sorozatot kell, vagy So it doesn't need to be all steps. It doesn't need to be a process. It can also be part of a screen. So for example, the payment or the selection. See 6 ways of selection. Anything, any part is okay. Okay? So you have 5 minutes for 6 ideas. And draw. Okay? Go. Any step? Okay. Okay, time is up, but it's okay if you have that many as you have. One very important thing that you have to keep in mind, well, it's advisable that you keep in mind when you brainstorm, is that don't judge yourself. Don't say that, okay, it's not going to work, or it's too difficult, we cannot solve it. This is not how it used to be. Don't try to think of how it is usually done. What's important in this exercise is that you really come up with not the greatest, because we don't know that yet, but the most wide and as many ideas as possible. As a second round, I would like to ask you again to fold the paper into 6 parts, because we're going to do a different round of the same thing. So now you have some ideas, and we are going to work on those ideas or other ideas with a different method. And I would like to ask you to choose between the 2 methods. One is, remember the persona, and I explained to you the company, why it's important, that we had the base camp there. Remember? Imagine that you are one company, your favorite, or the company that might be a favorite company of your persona. And try to think of how that company would be doing it. Okay? This is one option. The second option is take no technical limitations.
Sorry,
Choose a company. Okay, choose a company. For example, I choose Starbucks. And just imagine how would Starbucks solve this problem. Yeah. Okay, because Starbucks has an idea, has some business model, and has some relationship with their clients. What they say, what is important for them, and how can you turn that behavior? Starbucks is behaving some way. How can you turn that into solving a ticket buying thing? You can choose a different company. You can choose Apple. You can choose Microsoft. You can choose us. You can choose Backbase. You can choose BKV. You can choose an English method. Whatever. It doesn't matter. It's just that you choose one company, preferably that is important for your persona, and just think how they would solve this problem. Okay, this is one method, okay? And the other one is imagine that you are 50 years from now. So we are into 2017, the year of 2017. Then there are different technical possibilities. The limitations that we have today are not there then. How would you do the same process of buying the tickets then? Okay? Okay? Yes. Okay. No?
You don't have to buy the ticket.
Well, then that's what you have to write down. Just think about it, how would that work? It's exactly what you have to do. Exactly. Sorry?
How it comes to the 6 bolts?
Well, 6 solutions again. It can be 6 steps. It can be 6 different ways. It can be, again, six methods or 6 parts of the solution. Okay, it's a different page. Okay, got it? Wow. Okay, again, 5 minutes. Starting. Do you have the paper? Yeah, fold it. So for the second option, you don't have any limitations. You can choose whatever you would like to do. Okay, so time is starting now. So 5 minutes again. Again, this you do on your own, and you are going to have okay, again, 6 ideas on your own on a piece of paper, choosing one ideation method.
And now I would like to ask you to take the time and share in the group. So, join the group. So you can share it with somebody. Okay, you have about 20 minutes to share. So please use that 20 minutes wisely, because at the end, I would like to ask you to vote, not vote, but okay, my English is not on top today. Anyway, explain it differently. So I'm going to ask you to mark the ideas with a green, or areas of the ideas with a green or a red dot. If green is something that you would like to take forward, which the group thinks it's a good idea to keep, and the red one is one that at this form it is not something to use, it's not usable, or you need to change it in some way or the other. Okay, so share your ideas and stick the CDs on it to show if you want to keep that or if you want to work on it a bit more. Okay? Because at the next step, what you will have to do is come up with one solution, one screen, one wireframe for the whole group. Okay? I see that you're ready or almost ready. As the next step, I would like to ask you to come to one feasible solution in this year. Okay. It can be a process if you have so many ideas, but it's also okay if you just draw one wireframe of the solution, one part, one step of the solution. So just come up with one deliverable, as to say, to agree in the group of one solution, one wireframe, one screen flow. Okay. So, I think, yeah. So, to try out the prototypes, we're going to do a twist. And since you do know everything about the prototype, and usually it's not you who is using the wireframe or the solution, but somebody who has not been involved in the design process, because you remember you are not your user, so probably you're not going to use your own software, your own product. So I'd like to ask one person from each group who is going to be the tester. Raise your hand, and we are just going to shift around. So a tester from that place is going to come here, a tester from here, and there. So we need testing managers. Go ahead. And I would like to ask you to not give any hint, any help. Just check if she can understand it. But somebody from this table, please. Please move over there. And somebody from that table, please come over here. Okay. Thank you. So one thing is, I don't know how you. I was just. No. What are the consequences? Or consequences. What is that you were talking about?
We have multiple consequences. For example, the application is about you have a QR code at the transport. You read the QR code and you get an application where you can buy it easily. And to confirm that you read the right QR code, you put a map which shows where you are. and it gets too much attention. So the tester tried to press the map or do something with the map, but we didn't want to. We just wanted to display this information as a confirmation. So this was one consequence. And another one that we wanted to simplify the process, the payment process, to practically to one step. You see all the information in the first screen. You use a swipe button to avoid accidental click, which is very easy to do. But to do the swipe, you have to do it by intention. So.
Okay.
And in this way, we were able to remove the confirmation step, which is an extra step in the process, where you repeat the data.
And what did?
What we learned that if we do it like this, at the end of the process, I didn't remember what was the price of the ticket because she didn't pay attention to those details. Just
okay. Okay. So I think this is a perfect example of why it is important to have, and I think you also experienced that at the very first session, and why it is important to draw it out and test it as soon as possible. Radmila also had a discussion like this here, where she was trying to explain to the user how to use the system and what are the environmental things that are affecting it, but you're not there to explain it to the user. So if there is a problem with it, it's very good that it comes out this fast and early on, so you can change it. Maybe there is an error in the process. Maybe you were just too forward thinking. The world is not ready for your solution. Well, it is not ready. Maybe the world is not there yet. But if the world is not there yet, you can decide if you just choose to wait or you maybe change your way of thinking. So yes, thank you. This was actually the point of this exercise, to see that you came up with something which is based on research. And at the end, it is very important that you test it, because there might be some glitches that you have to explain. And actually, this is why we did it this way, that you do not explain what is written down. So your user has to figure it out, what you designed. Any questions you have on the process or anything that you discussed today? If you don't have any, I do have one for you. Do you see any place how you can use this or any of the things that we've been doing today in your daily work? Or let me put it another way. Find a place where you can use any of these and try it out how it will work. Just change one little thing. And what I would like to ask now is on your desk, you see these forms. This is a new feedback form. This is good. And I would like to ask you for the plus, again, just as usual, write down the positive things that you experienced today. For the deltas, the changes that we need to do. For the question marks, the questions that you have now that you didn't answer. And for the star, please write the idea that you take away. So for example, the answer to the question, what is that one thing that you think that you can change in your daily work based on what we did today? So please have some answers over there. Okay?